Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, I was looking at the video games specifically that my son was playing and what was going on in the world. It's not been great. We've been looking at, possible World War III. When I say that, if you look at all the stuff that's going on in the United States, it looks like a asymmetric attack against the United States. So I thought I would focus on something a little less gloom and doom today and something that seemed more fun to me. So I was talking to my son about this stuff, and he's a big fan of video games. He always has been, but I understand that a little bit more now than I thought I would. He gave me the direction to kind of look at FPS games and to look at the top games for 2022. So for the purposes of this video, we're looking at Halo Infinite, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, Quake 2021, Black Mesa, Doom Eternal, Overwatch 2, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Halo Half-Life 2, Rainbow Six, Escape from Tarkov, Titanfall 2, Left 4 Dead 2, Team Fortress 2, Valorant, and Unreal Tournament. Now, let's talk about what I saw that I thought was just totally off the rails. Okay, so first off, full disclosure, let's talk about what I saw, what I think is cool. I see the draw for kids now more than I ever thought I would. These games specifically, I discarded anything I thought that was just totally off the rails, not real. So Halo and like Team Fortress and Doom Eternal, their guns aren't going to make it anything in here. The other thing is, I was pleasantly surprised after watching Brandon Herrera's video, thinking that Attack on Tarkov or whatever the video game he was covering, the guns in there, how ridiculous they were when they took World War II guns and put things like comps on them and suppressors and optics that never existed onto classic firearms. Being a classic firearms guy, that kind of breaks my heart. The second thing I saw were the rarity of the collections in the gun in the video games. So the draw I could see is if you don't have access to a lot of guns, or you don't have access to like Tim from Military Arms channel or Brandon Herrera's video, his archive of awesome guns, or Mr. Guns and Gears or Colion Naguar's. This is a cheap way to look and see, virtually use video game guns or guns that you would have never ever have access to in your life. The rendering that I saw on these guns, two of these are pulled up from the video games, the Mag 7 and the CZ75. They're amazing. So you actually get to see very good detail. There's some little mess ups, but I think on some of them, but I think that's indicative to who's making the video games. Meaning these are leftists that know nothing about guns. They have to rely on people like me and people like you and people like Tim to make content that kids use. Well, not kids, adults, everyone that likes video games. I'm going to have to start trying to mess with them more myself. But my problem with video games has always been the controller. I do okay on a machine, on a computer, because that's my wheelhouse. But with that, what I was looking at with these are how ridiculous they are, or how ridiculous the accessories are. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that in these games specifically, if you discount the total fantasy games, and they're all total fantasy to some degree, but the total, like the Doom Eternals and the Overwatch 2, the guns are pretty damn realistic. Okay? The only thing I did see were who would put a 40 Mike on an MP5. I don't see you clearing a house with a 40 millimeter grenade launcher, and I don't see you wanting to be near them at all when that thing goes off. Now, I do know you can use it for tear gas and beanbag rounds and baton rounds. That's cool if you're doing riot control, I guess, for a 9mm. Again, I would wonder why you would use an MP5, because you're still wanting to be farther back. And I think if you were going to use 40mm, you'd want more than one shot at a time, unless it's a small crowd. In which case, you would want one of those 6-round 40mm grenade launchers to shoot tear gas into large riots. But I digress. The one that was really surprising to me was seeing the Mag 7. Now, I've seen these before, not in real life, but in I'm a gun guy. I research guns. I look for things. And this was one that I thought was interesting because it's from South Africa, number one. You don't see a lot of them. It's like the Vector, not the Vector Chris, but the actual Vector. There's a Vector pistol. You've probably seen it on shows like Battlestar Galactica. One of their main pistols is a South African pistol. That's pretty popular back in the Gap, I guess, and in South Africa. It probably still is. But we don't see them very much in the United States because they weren't very popular here. You can't go up against things like Glock and 1911, Colt here in the United States, or even the CZ, without showing quality or being awesome in general. What I did notice were the accessories in addition to that. Like, look at that CZ75. Okay, the mag up front is just a foregrip, and I understand that. But why you would use an empty mag like that in a video game, especially in one of the newer ones, when you have things like the Micro Roni. And I've seen the Ronis on the video games, specifically I saw it on Rainbow Six, and I think I saw it on the other one that I thought was really cool. Let me find that screenshot again. I don't want to go back a frame, so I just want to look at this for the video game list itself. Escape from Tarkov had it. That's what I was looking at. So what I noticed about him was that putting optics on things. One of the ones I saw, which my son showed me that started this idea for this podcast, was either an Uzi or it was a MAC-10 with an ACOG on it. And my first thought was, why would you put something with a ranging capability out to like 1,000 meters or even 600 meters on a gun that there's no way in hell it could reach that far, and if it did, it would be ineffective. And you're on a wing and a prayer at that point anyway. But it's interesting because it looks cool, and I think that's what they do that for. What was more interesting was what my son was saying about, the suppressor. He's like, well, that suppressor's giant. It wouldn't be on there. And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, it would. The suppressors in the Vietnam era, that's when the MAC-10 would have been a real popular thing. They were issued with giant suppressors in Vietnam to silence them or to suppress the report of the gun. And they were used by Spec Ops back in the Gap in a lot of places. So I understand the overly large suppressor on something like the MAG-10, or the MAC-10, not the MAG-10. I keep seeing the MAG-7 and I keep thinking that. I don't understand that. Well, I understand why they'd have larger suppressors, but putting a huge giant one on a rifle that's already like standard issue, like a G3, that doesn't make sense to me. Putting a suppressor on a G3 makes absolutely great sense to me, but putting a giant one on it, no. But it looks cool for video games, and it makes a hell of a lot more sense now for video games than me, if you're not if you're not rich. So you pay $60 for a game. That's usually the going rate for them, unless you get them on like Xbox Live or something else for part of your monthly subscription for them. That they're just cool. You get to look at these things. Watching my son play, he does like using MP5. He also likes using an L85, and I always laugh at him because an L85 weighs about 11 pounds. It's probably the worst battle rifle or assault rifle in that case, because an L85 really does have the giggle switch, that I would ever use. For 11 pounds, I would go for a G3 any day of the week, a FAL, an AR-10 of some kind, probably an M110 if I was going to do that, which is for long range. That's where I see in the battle rifle space. If it's 11 pounds, I'm going to carry something like that because I want that extra kick, and I would try to keep them far away from me. But I understand the list, because the list for some of these games are damn near infinite, and the options to change, down to the finish. And I've always been a black gun guy, meaning I like black on my guns or gray, because I'm a traditionalist. But I understand why people would put flash on their guns to personalize them. Me personally, I want them to blend into the surroundings as much as I can. If I put flash on them, it's going to be camouflage. So I don't understand gold guns. I never have. But in video games, it kind of makes sense. As fast action as they are, you're not really hiding. You're kind of going to get up and close and personal really quick. So you might as well show off to whoever it is how far you've advanced in the game to get these skins or get these accessories, or to even get the gun itself. That I thought was cool, that you had to get certain types of achievements to get certain weapons. I saw a lot of guns that I never thought I would see in real life. I haven't seen in real life. Anything from China, for instance. Anything from Japan, for instance. Real guns. I was actually surprised to see a lot of these, and for a millisecond, I actually thought, well, that's a total fake gun, just to research it and find out, yeah, it's not fake. It's just really, really obscure. An American will not probably ever see these guns in his lifetime, unless you find the one example that was brought over by an SOT to sell to someone else who has another SOT or has an FFL Class 3 to have firearms like this. What I do think is hilarious is the amount of revolvers, break action shotguns in a type of combat type game, a first-person shooter type game. Now, are they relevant? Yes. I don't think I would choose those ever in a combat scenario unless all things go to hell. What I did notice, though, was there's a couple of these that had display cases or video game throwbacks to other video games that have these guns that you can pick up, probably use even, but they're in cases, display cases. They're not meant to be used for all this stuff. So this is kind of like an achievement to run around with a muzzleloader or a break-action shotgun or a rifle that is a classic rifle that you would never see in real life. And I think that's a compelling thing to see too, because again, these are some of these guns you're never going to see as an average collector. Seeing an M4, I understand why the M4 is probably one of the entry-level guns, because in the United States, everybody has an AR-15. At least, that's what it appears to be. That's why the government's going so hot and heavy after the AR-15. Same thing with the Kalashnikov. Those seem to be easily found. Attack on Kharkov, or whatever that one. Sorry, again, I'm not a video game guy, but I thought this was interesting, and that's why my son was talking about it, and that's why this is here. I think it was interesting because there's a lot of Russian or Eastern weapons, and a lot of them were really obscure. Some of them are prototypes that the Russians themselves have fielded for a millisecond and realized it wasn't practical, or it never made it past the prototype stage where the mechanics of the gun didn't work out right. You need only look as far as the AK-12 to see that in real life. AK-12 came out its first iteration. There was a lot of features that Western shooters would have definitely liked. I think the Russian shooters would have liked, but they couldn't get past the reliability thing. They probably could have, had they had more money, more time, better engineers like people from the West to make those guns do what they need to do. I'm still a believer that the only good thing that ever came out of Russia, especially seeing what's happened in Ukraine lately, is the AK-47 or the AK-74, because there is no way we ever, as United States or NATO, can ever meet Russia on the field of battle. We would decimate them. If it was a set piece, one-on-one battle, the casualties would be a 1,000 to 1. These guys are operating on the same level as Iraqis did in the 91 Gulf War. So I don't want to, I'm really understand why we're not wanting to have a direct combat fight with the Russians. At the same time, it looks like the powers that be are really trying hard. And if you live in the United States, it doesn't take a conspiracy mind to look at how many things are going on right now at the same time to wonder, are we under attack? You can't have a phosgene cloud in the eastern United States, have the government not cover it for a while, and now it's everywhere because it's too big that people can't avoid what's going to happen. I think there was another train derailment either in Texas or somewhere in the South that released another cloud of bad stuff, and it makes you think, as a conspiracy guy. Not always a conspiracy guy. I just don't trust the media as much as I once did. There was a time back in the gap, especially with my dad, when he was still around, I would have trusted ABC News or CNN or Fox, because these guys are the ones that are supposed to be charged with giving us information, and they suck bad. And it wasn't Trump that made me go, oh yeah, well, it's fake news. No, it was the fact that these guys lied to us outright about several things that are reality. The Russia hoax, yeah, you can use Trump as an example. That was a total hoax. The COVID stuff is where I would lean more towards. First, it was safe and effective for the vax. Then it was, and it would also definitely stop the spread of COVID. That's why people that didn't get sick or weren't sick were supposed to get the shot. Fast forward to where we are now, there's a very high probability, that's what it's looking like from the CDC, this is not me speaking about that the vax actually may have contributed to people getting COVID multiple times. And if you look at the data along with what everybody else has said, specifically from other countries, it looks like we over-vaccinated and vaccinated too quickly with something that wasn't ready for the market. So let's get past the vax stuff. Let's talk about some news stuff for New Mexico specifically. The reason why I started New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union was, and I digress,
I can't let it slide.
Well, you're going to hear my intro again. Sorry about that. I was switching back to another frame, and my intro kicked on. Anyway, House Bill 9, the Safe Storage Act, probably is going to pass. It's already made it past several committees. It's already looking like that is something that they want us to see or want us to have in New Mexico. House Bill 101 is been looked at again. They had to make some amendments to it. The amendments to the House Bill 101 are kind of stupid, but it makes sense. The reason why it makes sense is that these people don't know what they're talking about. So they've been called on the carpet several times for what they put in House Bill 101. If you're not familiar with House Bill 101 in New Mexico, it is the assault weapons and semi-automatics ban. They were trying to get the firearms converter stuff done in House Bill 72. Semi-automatic converters is what they call it. And that is where you could tell that the people that were writing these bills were relying on so-called firearms experts that have no clue what the hell they're talking about. So there's several edits going on with House Bill 72, and I think it and House Bill 50 will eventually be rolled into House Bill 101 and the corresponding Senate bill. But House Bill 9, that is the Safe Storage of Firearms Act, has already cleared committee and already had a roundhouse floor vote for the House. and it passed like 37 to 32. So it barely passed. If you're not familiar with House Bill 9 is about, it's safe storage. It means that if you have any firearm out and they, for some reason, come to your home and it's not under lock and key or in a safe, you've just committed a crime. So now they can put you in jail. That's what all these gun laws do, is you get in trouble for another crime or an opposite crime, something not even related, and they use it as a multiplier to put you in jail. In reality, what it does in New Mexico is it puts you in the system, costs you money, and then you're back out on the streets. But now you're either a felon or you're a criminal of some kind that's going to be on your record until you can get it expunged. So they're basically making you pay a lot of money to get that off your record. If House Bill 101 passes, that's the assault weapons ban, I hope it don't. There seems to be a lot of opposition, and there seems to be a lot of ambiguity, a lot of confusion around it, because the language in it is still stupid, and it classifies a lot of modern sporting rifles in the category of assault weapons. But this makes sense in New Mexico because we have leftists in running our government. So call your reps, call your senators in the House, roundhouse, but call them at the national level too. They're going to push hard, especially if you didn't see what happened yesterday or day before yesterday. I just saw it in the news. There was a shooting, quote-unquote mass shooting at another school, a college. Guy was known on to law enforcement. Law enforcement didn't do nothing about it. He managed to get another gun. Criminals don't obey gun laws. Only law-abiding citizens do. And he killed people in a heinous act. Now, it goes back to saying what would have been able to, in a gun-free zone. Since it was at a college, it was a gun-free zone. Gun-free zones, having worked in them for 12 years, piss me off. Because you're basically a can of tuna stuck in the school district. You cannot carry a gun legally. And while I understand that to some degree with certain staff members that shouldn't have them, and that you do have kids around you, I like to see myself as a sheepdog, and I've always gotten trained so that if I had to use it, I'm more accurate than your average bear. And that's the level of training I would expect for anyone that was around kids or anyone around the public that was going to have to make those hard choices if you actually draw your gun. That said, it's still better to have, a good old boy who knows something about firearms with a firearm in a bad situation where bad dudes are doing bad things to normal people. That's why I'm all for constitutional carry. Free men don't ask permission. You should be able to roll wherever you are without looking at a sign. And I understand some private, businesses don't want you to walk in with them, and it makes sense to some degree. But again, if you're in and out, it shouldn't matter. More specifically, are they going to shake you down every time you go into said business? No, they're going to wait till you do something stupid or something does something stupid to you and you had to use it. And I'll take my chances with a jury over, being carried by 6 people in a funeral, that or having to put my family through a funeral. I personally think that what was really cool about this was getting to see what my son has always saw. My sons, so to speak, both of them, my 16-year-old and my 18-year-old. My 18-year-old lives with me, so I get to see the funny stuff that he does with video games. My 16-year-old plays video games and lives in his own world. He's antisocial like I was when I was his age. But I understand a hell of a lot more why they get drawn to this. The play is a little weird. I'm not used to seeing people try to clear a room or a building in extreme speed, mostly because that usually would get you killed in real life. But in a video game, you have a set amount of time to get objectives obtained, so it makes more sense to me. I don't know. I'm just looking at the news lately. I wanted something different. And being as video games are a big part of this house for at least one member, I thought it would be cool to look at these weird guns and see the practicality of them. The CZ, it's practical in some sense, but it looks goofy, and I don't know how you would carry it with that stupid mag up front instead of a foregrip. And even with a foregrip, how would you carry it? It'd make more sense like the Ronis do, where you could have an extra mag up front as a grip, but that if you did a mag swap, you could just grab that one, pop it in your mag well, and roll forward. But that's not the case with the CZ. And I've already discussed the MP5. Why would you put a 40mm grenade launcher on it? It just doesn't make sense. Like, share, subscribe, rumble, comment if you'd like. Let me know what you think. Be great.